Okay, I guess everyone can see me, right? Because now I can't see y'all. I just see my presentation screen. So, hi everyone. I'm Mustafa. Adrian already gave a demo, gave an introduction to my background and some sorts, and I'll give you the remaining. So, I'm an iOS developer. I started out as soon as the language Swift was out. So, I that was the day when everything was at the same level. Everyone was had a new language in town. So I started learning Swift. I've been developing apps since then, or at least I've been trying. And I always wanted an indie app out there. I made small projects for the college groups, for students in my college, but I never made a global app which, could, get my name in the community shine brighter. So for me, I tried to become an indie developer for two reasons. One was to, establish myself as a recognized developer in the community because I'd really like to be known in the community and interact and, share my learnings with them. And the second thing is I don't want to be a person who works a 9 to 5 job all my life, and I'd like to have a side project of mine, which I can potentially convert into, a full, not a side project anymore, but an indie project. And I'm going to be sharing my experience with you. And while I've developed these apps, I've been working full time at a company. I cannot work during those companies' hours on my personal projects. So this is all what happens after that 9 to 5 gap, right? So I'll begin and I'll share with you my journeys with what happened with Lingo, what did I do wrong, and then with tasks and what I did right. So here we go. So first of all, there is no how to make an app nice and quick and continuing to earn revenue from it. So making an app and putting it out there is fun and easy, but if you don't make revenue at the end of it, sooner or later you'll feel that hurt. You're like, I'm putting in so many hours, but I'm just seeing like 500 downloads. Was it worth it? And the second time when you try to make that app, you just keep down, you just get demotivated, and you just have to remember that it's a journey you do because of your passion. And if you're after the revenue, it's really hard because passion will actually communicate with your users. Your users will resonate with you because you're passionate about your journey. And by the way, if any of y'all have questions, you can stop me in between, and I'm okay with breaking my flow. So at the end of the day, so just remember, if you're making an app, be make an app about something that you're passionate about and something that you're familiar with. Because if you try to dive into waters which are not really familiar to you, you will not be able to understand the user, right? So here we go. I've made two apps so far. One of them is Lingo, which failed miserably. At least in my eyes, it failed. Although it was a good product and everything. And then there was Tasks, which looks really promising right now. So let me give you a backstory into why I built Lingo. So my wife is an Arab and she never spoke English. So in order to get her to learn and speak English, I made an app called Lingo. And Lingo is basically a way. So I saw her struggling with the way she was learning, and I decided just to make an app for her so I could deploy content on it. She could, consume the content, and I would get reports. And while making this one prototype app just for her, right, I saw that she benefited out of it. And I was like, you know what, why not expand this into something that kids could use? And so that was one of my mistakes. I never spoke to my users. I just said, hey, this works on my wife, this works on me, amongst 5 to 10 kids, but that's just not enough because there is always bias when you are handing out the app to the kid and the kid can do it. Because I helped them get over the first step of learning the steps in the app, but after that, they picked on really quick. At the end of the day, the kid's going to decide if they want to use your app or not in the first 2 minutes. And that's all it takes, no matter how fancy your graphics and everything are. Keeping kids engaged into something that they have to answer, and it didn't resonate with them. And that's something I failed at. I should have gotten my app in front of the user much quicker, much sooner before I thought it's the perfect app out there, because you will not hit perfection unless your users give you feedback and you act on that feedback. The second thing is I took too long to actually get the app out there in front of people. So what happened is I added this feature and then I added another feature. And I thought that if this third feature isn't there, there's just no point to releasing the app. So then I added a third feature. After that, I was like, oh, the answers should sync across all the devices. So I added that support, and I added complex things like handoffs and all of those things. And adding all these supports at the end, I made a really good app which integrates well with the Apple platform. But at the end of the day, the kids don't really need that, and parents don't really need that. They just want a simple question answer thing where the kid enjoys it. So, in spite of everything, it in the fact that I took too long, that was another stepping stone for my failure. And the next thing is I was extremely lazy when it came to making marketing content. You will not believe it. I made no marketing content, and I regret this. Had I done that, it's actually pretty easy to get featured because I learned that with tasks. Getting featured is not that difficult. The only thing that you need to do is be honest and be upfront with indie developers, because there's a sense of giving back in the community. And even famous editors like 9 to 5 Mac, they will feature you because it just takes them not too many resources to write a small blog about you. And they actually are pretty happy to feature indie developers all over. And overall, if you see, the app looks like it looks very nice and looks appealing in some sort of way. But at the end of the day, this is not something that kids would have wanted. This looks good from a parent's point of view, maybe, and I should have pitched my app to parents and not the like. It should have a. I did not think it through clearly, right? While developing the app, I was using it. My wife was using it, and she enjoyed it. It didn't mean that it would resonate with kids. So, I mean, the three lessons I learned were: get it in the hands of your users, make your marketing content simple and engaging, and always understand what your product is and who will hold it. So then came the second step. So after Lingo failed, and I'll talk about Lingo's pricing on later on. But after Lingo failed, I realized there's no point, so I just let it be there out there as a free app. And Lingo was actually featured in the Indian App Store. And when it was featured in the App Store, it got a lot of downloads, but it did not generate any revenue, or it did not retain users. So the second step was tasks. Now I'll dive into a little bit history on how I came to make tasks. Before that, are there any questions?
I had a question, if nobody wants to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was wondering, in your experience with Lingo, since you were working with students, and I was wondering if you had any onboarding takeaways since you were working with students, and how did you just deal with onboarding them to the app? Since, like you said, the buyer would be different. The That would be the parents that would introduce the app to the student, but to the children. But were there any, like, I definitely have one takeaway where you said the question answer format works better, where it's engaging with the student. But yeah, I was just wondering if you had any other takeaways in terms of onboarding a young student to an app in an
So,
educational context.
yeah. So the onboarding of the app was fairly very simple. So when you start the app out, you just get one simple course. Like you can choose nouns, pronouns. Like you see these options given here under English. Lingo Stories is in there initially. So you get these options like nouns, pronouns, articles. You just tap on that. You get these worksheets, which you see in the first screenshot, and you just go ahead and you start taking your questions. And the questions are just single choice answers. And it seems very simple, and kids do it. But the point was that even those two steps were too hard for kids to do it, and they like more gamifying the process than
Oh,
they like a more theoretical approach.
I see. Perfect. Thank you. That answers my question. Thanks.
So the
Yeah,
second
sorry,
step, yeah.
Mustafa. There was a bit of a problem with the audio. I have a question. You said that it took too long to get it out. I mean, could you say why? Is that because you don't get the feedback loop with the users? Is that the main reason why it's bad to take too long to get it out?
So yes, the main thing would be feedback from users, or and the other thing is you spend too much time making it. And when you've made it and you're really proud of the gig that you've made, it just took you a lot of effort to do that. And in the end, it just demotivates you even more. You're like, I did so much. I worked for 5 months straight into this. And had I known these points earlier, maybe I wouldn't have spent so much time. Like my users don't care about handoff. Which kid would care about handoff where, you could resume a quiz on the iPhone and an iPad? Or which kid would care so much about reports or so many things? Like had I not done this and I just got a barebone app out there and added these things as features, if it picked off, would have been a better approach so as to dumping everything and then not having enough, not knowing that it's going to work out.
And then one other thing quickly, or maybe you can answer it later, is because of the audio, I didn't understand what you would have done better in terms of marketing. Or I mean, you can maybe explain that from the tasks perspective.
Yeah, I'll do that towards the end. Cool. So coming to tasks, tasks is a very simple app. The time it took to develop this app was barely 2 months, 2.5 months max. But the ideation for this app took another 2 months. So like 2 months, I just sat and thinking about why am I going to make another productivity app when the market is already filled with productivity apps? And the reason I thought of making tasks is because this was a problem I faced with Lingo. I wanted to, make Lingo and track my various features I'm doing, track my processes and all of that. And I couldn't find any app to do that. There were either too simple or too complex apps, and to do apps just didn't work for me. None of my apps were to done. You cannot say add the stories feature and it cannot just be to do and done, right? You start the stories feature, then it's in progress, and then you test the feature, and then it's done, right? So I needed a Kanban based app which met a to do concept. And I tried multiple apps and none of them really worked well with me. And at the end, I just used Things, which is a very famous app. And I faced so many problems and I didn't realize it back then. And after Lingo didn't work out, I was like, what can I do next? And this was a very good idea I had. And this idea worked out, I believe, is because it was not so much as my bias to it. There were actually a lot of times, if you've noticed, there are always a debate going on. There's an iOS Slack channel, and where there's this consistent debate going on, like which is the best and every time it would turn out into a debate, no answer. And I was like, how can no one have a definitive answer when there are like a numerous amount of task managers? People recommend Things, but then they're like, this is not there. And people recommend Trello, but then they're like, I don't really like it, but it's the only one that works. So finding out all the things that users didn't like from their existing apps and trying to build an app that incorporates all of their feedback and gives them a little bit more of uniqueness to it. And that was exactly what Tasks was. So that's and I made sure I do not repeat the mistakes that I did with Lingo into Tasks. And let's talk more about Tasks now. So the things that I did right is I heard the users first before even thinking about what the app is going to be. And once they gave their feedback, I wrote down all the 30 points that they mentioned. And I saw that this and this come out to be a very good point, and I can make that a feature. I can make that a feature. And initially, the app was just a to do manager with statuses. So you can define your status, which is to do, doing, in progress, testing, done. And you can define these statuses, right? And you just add tasks to it and you shift them along the different statuses. And that's it. That was the app. And as soon as I got that done, I put it in the hands of users. Now, as soon as users got the app, they're like, this can work. Can you maybe add this? And I can consider moving from my existing thing and starting using this. And that was the important thing, right? From the amount, I had 50 people who were testing the app out for me initially. And I was like, thing. So now the impact of adding that one feature a lot more, because that was, I think that would be around 40% of the users, right? They were requesting the exact same thing, and the other 30% were requesting just more common features, but with a lower majority. Say 20% of the users requested another set of features. So I quickly added that feature and I gave it to them, and they're like, wow, this is great. And then everyone else, like 60% of the users asked for a third feature, and I added that third feature. And this whole process took me just 2.5 months to ship. And it's a very simple app. It's just when you listen to your users and when you let them be a part of your journey, they worked on the product with you, and they'll ensure that you reach that success to some extent. And I'll talk about initial tests as well, which will help me with my marketing later on. So then after that was done, I made sure that I've considered what the users want, and I've considered what I want, and I want to see where the app will grow out to become into. And that was very important, because you have to think about what will the app become, so as to you make sure that you have space in the app to incorporate all these features. I got this into the hands of the users when I would have been embarrassed to show an incomplete app, but it was just so necessary to do. And I made sure that even with 60% completion, I just put the app out there in the hands of the users. And the fourth most important thing, one of the most important things, which I think differentiated tasks a lot, is I tweeted about my journey step by step every day on Twitter. And every time I say that, I'm working on this, and then 20 people like it, and 10, like 5 people follow me because they like the idea of tasking. I should keep testing. And when I say that, oh, now you can add images to your tasks, and people are like, wow, that is cool. And then they like the idea of tasks, so they follow tasks to see what it has become, or they sign up to be a beta tester. And writing about the journey is really important, because the community has insane power in getting you success. You can see your community wherever it may be, Facebook or Twitter or Reddit or anywhere, right? When you start writing these steps about your process, these people they feel like they're proud, and they're like pretty like, wow, that's pretty cool coming from one person instead of coming from a company, right? And if a one person team is doing things that corporates weren't able to do with their apps, right? They really like that, and they keep retweeting your content, and every time they do that, you and your app both become more famous, and they're more aware of it. And the last thing is, I did a good job at pricing. I'll talk more about pricing and how I reached that option for pricing a little later, and I'll show you how did my pricing perform. Yeah, so now you have three options at pricing. Like honestly, you can just earn revenue three ways. You either have a pay upfront app, you have in-app purchases, or you have ads, right? I personally frown upon ads from my perspective, but if you have a game or you have something that really requires ads, go for it. I do not know anything about revenue on that front. Now there are two options that I can see myself. One is a pay upfront app, and one is an in-app purchase. The problem with the pay upfront app is you'll get only so many downloads, because people hesitate to download an upfront paid app. Like I know this person, Jordan. He made this app Spend Stack, and it's insane features all over App Store, features. He's also part of the Apple retail demo apps. So whenever you walk into an app store, you'll see his app pre-installed on these devices. And you think with that amount of fame, right, you would actually get significant amount of downloads. But he's just got around 5,000 downloads in a blog that he shared, right? That's after 1 year. And definitely he earns revenue, but if you're the kind of person who wants a smaller chunk of downloads, but you don't want to have the hassle of maintaining this, maintaining that, and taking care of the app 24/7, pay upfront is a good way to do. And I say pay upfront is a good choice when it's an easy to make app. Okay, you're not going to update the app a lot. It's just a few potential updates here and there, and it's not going to take a lot of time. huge chunk of your time in the future, right? And there are apps which have performed amazingly well. They've probably earned millions of dollars with the pay upfront model. But these apps aren't just any ordinary app. They're apps which are pushed forward by Apple so much. They're like literally shown you there. These apps are shown everywhere for you to download. Like like Things and Procreate. I'm not sure if you've heard of them. I mean, if you've not heard of them, you've probably not been on the App Store frequently enough. These apps are relatively low priced. Things is actually $80 across iPhone, iPad, and Mac. They're all separate apps. But Apple promotes these two apps like crazy, and they put them everywhere. And they make sure that these people get revenue because, and the reason Apple puts them in front is not because they like Things or Procreate, it's because they get 30% cut for any purchase that sells. So when Apple is doing your marketing as hell, you're actually paying them to do your marketing at the end of the day. So I'd say pay upfront app is when you don't really, you think it's a simple app, you just want to get it out there, let people download it once, they enjoy it for the limited time that it's useful to them, and then you just take back and you don't have to sit and update it every now and then. I hope that makes sense. Then there are in-app purchases, and now there are two types of in-app purchases. One is a consumable and non-consumable, and the other is a subscription-based. And subscriptions is the scariest word when it comes to users, and we'll get to that. So a consumable or non-consumable app is very simple. It's exactly like having a paid upfront app, except you want people to download it first, explore a little bit stuff for free, and then upgrade to access the rest of the things. And this was what I tried with Lingo. It was free to download. Purchase one of the plans in the app, and then you can unlock it forever, right? And this is just when you want a higher number of downloads. This works really well, but you never know how many of your users will convert. So there's a study which says, if you have a conversion rate of anywhere between 2 to 5%, greater than 2%, right? If 2% of your users actually pay for the app, you're actually doing good. So that's for in-app purchases when it comes to consumables and non-consumables. And finally, subscriptions. And subscriptions scare users away a lot. And users really don't like it these days. They feel like it's a scam trying to get money from them at a regular interval because they think that once you've signed up for this, you never know when your money keeps getting deducted, right? So now let me tell you about this. So when you do subscriptions, extra costs paying those bills, so you need users to keep paying you regularly in order to maintain that. When you have an app which will get a lot of feature requests and you'll have to put in time and effort into it and deliver updates, subscriptions make sense. And the good thing about subscriptions is first year Apple takes a 30% cut, but the next year they take a 15% cut for a user who's coming again. This is for a second year user. So you actually make 15% extra the next year. Now, one good thing I learned with tasks is if I would have just put a subscription model in tasks, I would have probably lost a lot of users. So what I did is I had a lifetime option in tasks and I had a subscription option in tasks. And I did not get any bad reviews for the pricing. No one has complained that, oh, I don't like this app because they don't have a option. And because having that lifetime option, Americans actually prefer downloading and buying the lifetime option over subscribing, although the subscription is 3.5 times lesser than the lifetime version. If I tell you you can buy this for $35 or you can buy this for $10 a year, I mean, I technically think, oh, $10 a year makes sense, but not in the case of Americans. They prefer paying $35 upfront so that they think they own it. So this is what someone told me from America, that they have this ownership mindset where they'd like to own software instead of lease software. So now when I had the lifetime option, why did I choose 10 and 35, right? So the reason I put 35 and 10 is I thought that I can support tasks for up to 3 years. So it's only sensible to have it three times the price of the yearly subscription. And the good thing about this, A lot of they about and the people and when people 40% of the users bought the $35 lifetime option, it's actually like a Kickstarter campaign. I can't leave my full-time job unless I have some money that I can, gain from my thing. And people buying the lifetime option of the app, right? That actually gave me a room for me. And I was like, okay, I have some money, because of these lifetime purchases, and I can maybe pursue this full time. And that's one reason why I left my full-time job and I'm now contracting for them, but I don't have to worry about working at odd times, right? I can take support answers and I can code at any point of time I want, and I contract for a much lower commitment of hours. So that was the reason of having both lifetime and subscription. The goal is to lifetime option, but not hide it in such a way that that would be my ideal case scenario. But right now, I'm not thinking much into it. This is extremely important. I finished developing tasks on May 15th. And for 15 days, I did nothing but make my press kit. For those who are not familiar with what press kit is, it's just marketing content. Screenshot all the screens and just put the screenshots in one folder. Do it for the iPhone, the iPad. If you have a Mac app, if you have a watch app, do it for all of those. And after that, make a separate bunch of screenshots with the device screen into it so that it looks much neater. And if they want to use it, write a pitch like what your app is. One pitch should be non-technical, one should be technical. So the non-technical is basically their blog, and the technical one is for people who want to use your app to see. They're like, oh, dark mode support. Oh wow, this has automatic syncing. Oh wow, this has CloudKit sharing. So this is extremely important. Zip it up, make it a Google Drive, and spam it everywhere. A lot of tech publishers have their email IDs on their Twitter bio. It's probably like 9 to 5 Mac rumors, Mac stories. All the tech publishers for these people, all the tech editors, they actually have their email ID written out in their bio. Just take it, write them a mail, spam it, and because of that, I actually got 9 to 5 to actually feature me. And only one tech publication replied back to me, 9 to 5 Mac. But as soon as 9 to 5 Mac featured me, right, 5 to 10 other publications just followed them. So they're like, ooh, 9 to 5 Mac featured that app, and I saw this mail somewhere in my inbox. Let me check it out too. So 9 to 5 Mac featured me. The next day, Mac Stories featured me. Mac Rumors featured, App Advice, bunch of Russian blogs, bunch of German blogs, and then I was spoken about in a podcast by Vitici and Ryan Christoph, Ryan from Mac Stories, and this just went on because it doesn't hurt to have your thing out there. And I send them a test flight link to test the app and with the link to all the resources that they'd probably ever need. And honestly, this was the most important thing. Without this, I would have a very small launch. I would probably not have reached enough users, and I would have done after launching the app on the first day, right, I got a bunch of just one day, 50 a day, 50 emails a day about, and most of them were like, wow, this app is amazing. This was what is missing. And you should consider adding this feature. I did not sleep for the first day of the launch because of the excitement. And what I made sure is for that initial, I replied to every email I just used to refresh, and I responded back within 5 minutes. Right now, I try to do it within 2 to 5 hours at most. That's because if I'm sleeping, it might go up to 8 hours. But having written or having a hand personalized email, so this is none of the copy paste stuff. If there was a bug, there was a purchase bug where he saw wasn't working that well. So for that, I used to just copy paste thing, try these steps. But in the end, I would write, hope you're well, take care, Josh, and stay safe. And I try to make it as personal as possible and keep it as frank, not as in company, because at the end of the day, you're not a company and you are a one person thing. And people really appreciate the fact that one person is doing them and act back than a company would. And that actually got me a huge win. A lot of users reached out to me in email and they were like, wow, this is amazing. Can you add this feature? And I was like, sure, this is in the roadmap. It might take 4 to 5 weeks to get there. And they're like, it's okay, I'm waiting and I've become a plus member and I'd like to see where this goes. So if the way you respond to their emails makes a lot of difference. So here are some numbers. The first I'm sharing numbers, and so the above column is where the impressions were 58,000. I had approximately 500 downloads, and I reached only $50 in revenue. And this was over an 8-month period while the app was in the App Store. On the other hand, asks in impressions on the App Store, it has over 29,000 downloads, 7,000. It has revenue in a period of 4 weeks. So something I reached that mark is definite because of my marketing kit and nothing else. Like this is definitely just because of my marketing. And I am something else, and everything became really silent. I went on to Reddit, and there's something called a self promote yourself on Saturday. Yeah, self promote Saturday or something. 1,000 downloads in a day, right? So just posting it out there, and you name it. Like if I miss something, I probably will. I'm saving that from some other day. And a major chunk of my downloads became 1,000 downloads a day because I was featured in the US App Store on the homepage. So being featured there definitely helped me. I was clocking an average of 1,000 downloads a day, and it was mainly in US, which is still where most of my revenue is. I think 80% of my revenue. So I think that's about it. It's fairly simple talk. It's just me sharing what I know. And
All right, yes. I would like to continue with a few questions. First off, if you didn't hear that part, I wanted to thank you for sharing all those insider details, especially, talking about actual numbers, which I think is great insight.
I'm just glad to share it. I hope to share it more publicly. But I've been holding off till I finish my development because I haven't had time to blog about it yet.
Of
I've just
course.
been stuck between features.
Well, I think if I can say anything about it, it's like, of course, you applied a lot of principles of the lean startup and, keep a very lean MVP. Don't develop things that people might not need, all those common advice. But I think also succeeding with an app business is a special kind of creature that needs special tactics. And you are very much, you were already saying the power of the community, how the community can help you, how you were doing it live, your development live and involving the community and being super transparent about what you're doing, also doing excellent support. Like if you're answering those emails within those hours, I think it's world-class support, better than many big companies, right?
Yeah.
All right, so a couple questions from my part, and so I think I saw a few tweets already about you planning the Mac version. So can you tell us about Mac and the Mac Catalyst approach or whatever approach you're following?
Yep. So again, this was a thing. I thought I cannot launch tasks without having a Mac app. So I was like, I must make everything and then launch it. And then I was like, no, Mustafa, you got to stop. Do not, do not do the Mac app. Just launch the app and let the users ask for a Mac app. If they ask for it, give it to them. And it's another marketing opportunity. And right now, I'm doing the Mac app with the Catalyst approach, which is just a checkbox.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually very, very, very simple. The only problem is there are so many unknown bugs which you cannot trace, and there are just some weird crashes because not everything works on the Mac really well.
Uh,
So to debug those crashes are actually what is taking me much longer, and to have a continuously crashing Mac app and not being able to diagnose it is a problem.
mm,
But making it look like a Mac app is not a really hard thing. Once you go through a lot of Mac apps, just stick with the basics. Do what Apple's apps existingly already do. I think it's fairly simple. They made it much, much simpler because I would have never made a Mac app otherwise.
I see. Oh, wow. Also, I saw a few comments, and maybe that relates to what you were saying, that some people were kind of saying that your app looks like it's an Apple stock app. Uh, what do you think of that? Do you think that's a compliment, or do you think you'd rather do another design if you could, or what do you think?
So, I mean, it's definitely a compliment in some way. I think it's a compliment. It just strikes familiarity with the user right away. And the reason I did that is because I didn't want to spend time too much on designing. I wanted to spend more time on making the app and working on the design later. And eventually, Apple reached out to me and they're like, you know what? Your app looks too much like reminders. Change it or we'll take you off the App Store.
Really?
And yeah, so this happened. So
No kidding.
Apple definitely helped me redesign the app to some extent. So now if you see tasks, its UI has been updated a little bit here and there. But the reason is because a lot of reviews on the App Store are like, some people were confused that Apple made this app, which I think is the compliment in the best way possible. And then some people were like, this is better than Apple's app. So I bet that the legal team at Apple didn't like it because before getting featured anywhere, the legal team okays it.
I see.
So if, for example, if your name is, if your name is not trademarked or something, they kind of look into it
Mhm.
and they see that, it doesn't cause any liability to them. So no one would say, Apple, hey, you didn't do your checking on your end that, someone just stole my name and you featured them. That's not right. So yeah, that was the only problem with making it look like very much like I think only one screen was very much like reminders. The Kanban board and everything else not so much.
Oh, wow, that's a scary story. We have all read these stories about apps being, on the wrong side of Apple's eye, and then it gets really nasty. So wow, that must have been a scary moment, eh?
I mean, if you're very quiet about it and you just talk it out with Apple alone in the room, on the chat box, it's very nice and simple. If you make noise about it, they're definitely not going to like it.
Hmm.
So there's always a quick and easy resolution. Those people are understanding. I won't I won't say that, that's unreasonable of them and this and that. I
Yeah.
mean, at the end of the day, just listen to them, take their in. No one else is going to give you a platform to put your app and gain revenue overnight like this.
All right. So you've mentioned the importance of the marketing, and you said it's the main difference between Lingo and the Task app was the marketing, the press kit you did. What about these developers who are very keen to have their own app, but they say, I'm not good at marketing. I'm an introvert. Do you think this kind of developer can uh, outsource that kind of marketing work, or do you think it is very important that you do it because it also is kind of your brand and your presence?
So that's actually a very good question. I'm not sure if I'm the right person to answer this, but I can see a way to get around this. I have done something similar. I cannot make icons very nicely. So what I do is I ask my friend to do that for me. So if you're not very good at making your own writing about your marketing content, you ask a friend of yours as a favor, can you please, like, this is the app out there. See, you're introvert in front of people, but again, with your friends, you're never an introvert, right? You're just a normal person who shares and talks. So give them what you think about your app and ask them, can you please refine this and, and then at the last step is just for you to copy paste that and hit send on the email. And that's not so much of a step for an introvert or extrovert, but you can definitely ask your friends for help. I have done the same. In fact, my marketing content, right? I get it proof checked from my sister and from a friend, and they actually help me out with it. And yeah, so definitely seek out for a friend who can do it. And if you earn some revenue, definitely give them something. If if their help was very valuable. So I would definitely recommend doing something like that. Maybe.
That's a great tip. Eh? That's, everybody has connections, and it can make a big difference if you can leverage your network. That's a great tip. Yeah. So you've been also very much enthusiastic about CloudKit, and that's the networking technology you're using, I believe. And
Yes.
actually, Neil here and I were in your workshop at TrySwift conference this year. That was based on online workshops, and that was a great session, by the way. Would you like to say something about CloudKit? Maybe do some endorsement or encouragement for developers out there to use it or not use it?
So CloudKit is it's just fascinating for the idea to make an app and not require a backend developer, so that there's one lesser dependency for you. You're not dependent on someone delivering their end of the deal, and then you can continue with your end of the deal. Um, it's again free, so I don't pay for hosting. I don't have any additional charges. I don't have to maintain a backend. So I'm not advocating CloudKit over here per se. You can use Firebase if you want to. But what CloudKit enables me is to have the simplest onboarding experience where I don't need a sign up, login, or anything. You just go into the app and start using it.
Yeah.
Um, Syncing across all your devices, including the Mac app, which is going to come out soon. All these things just come out effortlessly. So I don't see any problem in not having it, right? And if you can incorporate it, definitely it's an added point, but not all apps can do it. But certainly indie apps, I think they're not too complex unless you're trying to make complex indie app, then that's basically more of a startup. And I think someone on Twitter said it really well. Indie apps are micro startups. And I think that's really well said. So, but if you're making something that requires a lot of backend and this and that, then you're not essentially a very small indie app. You're trying to strive to become a startup. So,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, use technologies that are given to you for free as much as you can, and at least use it for the starting out phase so that you get a proof of concept. And then if you ever need to, you can, have your own backend where you can do the things that you want to.
Okay. Great. Thanks. Now, doing an app, and I think you touched on that already implicitly, is there are many phases, right? You said you spend as much time figuring out about what you wanted to build and as much as you spend actually building it, and then actually doing the press kit and the support. So there are different skill sets needed along the way, and also there are different phases. Uh, do you think you need to be a well-rounded or a special kind of developer to be able to do all that and be happy with it and be productive with it? Because it's different mindsets, right?
So yeah, definitely. I think that's why when you get into get into making an indie app, if you're passionate, everything just ties up. answering support tickets becomes really easy because you know exactly what it is. You understand what the user wants. That doesn't take much time. Writing press kit is a one-time effort, so it's not so much. You can outsource it if you want to, but it's just a one-time effort, right? And I think the rest is all about passion. If you're passionate about what you've made, you will not find it hard to do the other things that come with it.
All right. Yeah, I think you also mentioned on the American client or customer mindset and how they like to own rather than rent the software. And I also think that they appreciate this passion and motivation. Maybe that's not so much the case in other countries. People just care about the software and not so much about the people making it. But I do think that Americans are also interested in, or they value that kind of attitude where you are, fully behind your product, and it's not just the software product, but it's also statement as an indie developer in this case, or a small one-man company.
I actually realized this because of all the mails that I've come. A lot of mails were from Americans, and I think it's their mindset where they, if they have a problem, they just write emails straight away and stuff. And when they write emails, I was surprised. I thought it would be a lot of, rude emails, but there were rarely any rude emails. I think just one or two actually in total of, I probably would have gotten around 200 plus emails. And most of them were really nice and they were really they knew that that it's a one person product. I don't know how they found out, but most of them thought it's a small team also. So they're
Okay.
like you and your team, but they all had compassion and they definitely appreciated it. And I never knew it was going to be like this unless I experienced it firsthand. So that's something surprising to me, and I understand where your question comes from.
Right. So that's great. And I have two friends actually. So one of them is selling almost free apps, like really low tier, and he tweets often about how ungrateful clients or customers are. And I have another friend who is more in the mid tier, and he tells me, "Hey, I'm super happy with the emails I get. People are really appreciative about what I do." And do you think that that matters how you price your app in the way that people, value or somehow react to your product?
I have definitely seen this on Twitter also. I think Rambo on Twitter, he said, the more expensive your product, the lesser the users will complain. And I don't know how that conclusion has come up to, but I think the more premium you are, I actually have no answer to this. Like I'd just be guessing
Mhm.
because of
Actually,
less
that's a well-known fact of retail. I've always wondered about it, but I think it's almost as if you've spent enough money on something, you don't want to feel stupid when that something turns out to be crap. so so it's like you know you want to justify your purchase somehow. It's a crazy
well,
phenomenon, but it's not only in apps. It's all over. It's
I'm
almost
taking my
anybody.
prices 3x now up.
Okay. So I think it's a good moment, and thanks for interrupting, Vikram. I think it's a good moment to open it up for your questions, right?
Okay, yeah. Thanks a lot, Mustafa. That was for those insights. That was super enlightening. I didn't realize you were a Bombayite. Hi. Are you in Bombay? Are you in Mumbai at the moment?
Yes, I am.
So again, thank you also for the time zone difference.
Oh no, trust me, once you go indie, you work basically 8 to 6. I work from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. So the time zone is just so chill. Adrian was so confused. He's like, "Are you sure you'll do it so late?" I was like, "Yeah, I start my day
So
around then."
excited because originally, as you probably know, this session was planned an hour earlier, but an hour earlier is kind of not right for everybody here because everybody works until 6 p.m. or so. But then I was concerned that I was going too late for Mustafa, and then he said, "You know what? I don't care. It's like I stay until very late at night." So I'm really delighted. Thank you.
But are you still holding down your day job?
So I left my day job. I didn't leave it, so they still wanted me to stay on as a contractor. So definitely it helps being a little stable. So I'm just collecting as much as I can before go into this. So I've already nearly gone into this full indie where I spend 8 hours a day on tasks and lesser time on other things. But yeah, so I hope to make this my full-time job, but and being in India, it's much easier because of the low cost of living. You'd know that. But yeah, so my goal is to hopefully make this a full-time gig.
I'm not so sure about the low cost of living. Every time I go down there, I find it expensive. And that's coming from
It's
someone who
because
lives
of
in
the flight
Switzerland.
tickets. That's because of the flight tickets.
Well, okay. But the thing I wanted to ask you about is what eludes me. I'm super excited, especially with Swift UI and Combine, and I'm working with it on my in my day job, and I love it. And the thing, I write code just for fun. The thing that eludes me is what's the next app to build? How did you come up? How did you choose of all the options you have? How did you choose the one you wanted to build?
It was just those things. So while developing Lingo, I faced the problem, but I never thought of making an app out of it. But it was that moment when there was this Slack and the people were just like, "Hey, anyone, any suggestions for a good task manager?" And as I told you, right, it always turns out into a debate. And there are so many apps that you think are perfect, but users have complaints for it. Like people have complaints about Twitter all the time, right? They're like, Twitter, can you please bring back my feed in a chronological order? And this is a problem people face, and people don't mind, sometimes paying for these things, even to explore it or something. Like a very famous indie app developer, Shihab, he's making a Twitter client. So
Hmm.
if you just address, say, 3 points of user feedback and other apps don't listen to them very well on this, like just three things that differentiate your app, it can be 20 things in common with it, right? Just one, two unique features which users feel like, oh, finally someone did it. Those kind of apps, there's always room for that. People who are part of this task journey, they send me emails saying, "Can you make a note-taking app with because I really like the way you made tasks." And I'm like, there are so many good note-taking apps. There's Bear, and I probably won't be able to beat Bear at it, right? It's just too good, and it's like I'm nowhere close to competing with those kind of apps, Notion included, right? But there's always room for apps. And if you can do existing apps but improve on them, something that you feel is missing, something more importantly that your users feel that they're missing from their apps, I think there's always room for that app.
So are you saying a good source of inspiration would be the App Store, looking at people's reviews and then finding the app that has consistent requests from users that are not fulfilled?
That could be one source, unless you come up with something, that you find a problem with. So if you find a problem, like Lingo was more of I found a problem and I tried to solve it. But if you really want to make an app and you want to, just have something out there, yeah, just make an app which is already there, but this time solves a problem of the user along with, their other needs. So that I think that probably my next app would be taking something that's on the App Store and improving its current existing state.
Hmm. I think I'm inspired to make a task app now.
Go ahead. I'll just
No,
look.
I'm just joking.
It was interesting what you mentioned that you actually wanted to have that app. It's like you scratch your own itch, which I think is very authentic again, because you were trying some other apps and they were not what you needed, and then you came up with the idea, right?
Yeah, so I mean that was in the back of my head. There were apps that I needed, but then when I ask people this question, they're like, "This is not there. This is." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I need this. I need this." And then I was like, then while developing and specking out the app, I was like, oh, during Lingo, I needed this. So, I might as well add this because I bet other users require this. And then I'd be like, anyone knows an app which does this well. And everyone's like, maybe this app does it, but then the app. So, for example, I'll give you a very good example. People like the status board approach of Trello, right?
Hmm.
But they hate that they can't tag things properly. And then they say that look at Clubhouse, they do it this thing very well. So everyone has their bits and pieces spread across all their apps, but you're definitely not going to use three different apps to do one basic thing. So
Hmm.
if you can give those three basic things in that app, and I required it, but I didn't realize it until much later that it's much easier to build that app out than to continue looking for the perfect one.
Awesome. Okay, some people are leaving, but from those who remain, do you have questions for from Mustafa?
Um, I have a question about, you talked about you spent a couple of months, well, quite a lot of time on ideation. So, I mean, that's somehow kind of wireframing, I guess, and just having an idea. Could you explain a little bit more about that process?
So the 2 months I spent actually was on making the models of the app. So if you normally like, if I just start off right away making a task app, what I would have done is I would have variables inside my task object, which would have been due date, status. Then I would have something called the priority. Then I would have something called tags, and then I would have something like this, and it would just become one massive object over a period of time, right? So to avoid that, I tried to phrase that out properly because I needed my task to be in such a way that tomorrow, if I add, say, a comments feature, right, which I did eventually end up adding, it doesn't make it hard for me to, um, keep adding things, and it should be backwards compatible. If I was going to go big on this, it had to be backwards compatible. When I add a new thing, it shouldn't break the previous version of the app. So what I did was, now if you see, you can add fields inside the tasks, right? And these fields are dynamic. I don't say that this field's name is title. You can change it to make it name, or if you care, you can change it to something called notes, and you can do whatever you want with it. So in order to have something that's playable, that's modifiable, customizable by the user, which was a very highly requested thing by users, right? They're like, I don't like this app because it doesn't let me customize anything. So in order to provide all these things, I actually had to model the app very properly. And once I modeled the app properly, like say you want to have two statuses, three statuses, four statuses, you wanted not one priority, two priorities, but you wanted as many priorities as you defined. Um, so these things were what took into most the chunk of the time. And the last wireframing was fairly simple because now that I have my task object, I can only show what is in the task onto one, say, one cell of the task, right? So I just initially I just put exactly just the task name, nothing else, and then as and when time went on, I was like, oh, might as well add priority, might as well add tag, might as well add this. But to make the model is the most important thing.
Cool. That sounds interesting. I guess it's also essential if you're using CloudKit, right? This kind of future proofing.
Yes, definitely. To think 10 steps ahead would be not 10 steps. That would be really scary. You just have to think in a way that it's easier to sync this thing across all devices. And if you even don't have CloudKit, I personally never thought of it as having CloudKit initially, although I knew I was going to integrate CloudKit. But to make it as simple as possible and to make it as lightweight as possible, I just try to work with what's best. So right now, what happens is a task is empty. It just has an array of properties, and each property could be a text property, a date property, a tag property, um, and basically priorities, your tags, your task type. All of these are nothing but tags, but they look and behave differently. So to make that kind of thing, and every property has a descriptor. basically what describes what the property is. I mean, it sounds really complex, but it's very simple when put down on paper.
Thanks a lot.
But CloudKit would then. So you haven't thought of making an Android app for Task?
Oh no, definitely not gonna make an Android app. I,
Why?
being an indie developer and at least an Apple platform indie dev, I don't think I should spend time making Android apps
But you could
because the
get
amount
someone
of
to
time.
make it for you, no?
Um, I'm not sure. Being Apple exclusive definitely helps earn points while getting featured, I'd say, at least for an indie developer. Apple definitely loves you being Apple exclusive. So I don't think I wanna do an Android app just yet. But
Okay.
if I do want to, it's possible.
But I was asking because of the choice of CloudKit.
CloudKit works on Android as well. It's fairly simple, not that hard.
Oh, that's
It
right.
just
I
works as
forgot. Yeah.
REST API calls.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
So you mentioned also that I mean Lingo. You called it a failure in your slide, which I thought it was a bit too harsh. But in a way, it set a lot of the foundation for what you're doing now. I know this may be a lot
Oh yes.
to ask for, but is there anything that you think you would do different if you did a third app? Is there anything that you did on the tasks that you said, if I had known better, I would have done that differently? I know this may be too early to say, but do you have any thoughts?
Okay, that's pretty. I think what I would do differently with my third app is take things easier and not tire myself out during development. So I promised a Mac app within a month, and I'm working really hard to get the Mac app out. Then I'm doing a watch app immediately after that. I'm adding widgets. I have to do iOS 14 thing. So I think over a period of time, I'm definitely passionate, but again, it I have to spend time with family and all of those things. And because of tasks, for you know I spent a lot of time on with my laptop, which I'd like to reduce that. But with my third app, I definitely want to plan it out better, do the initial development very quickly, and then maybe slow things down. But nothing from development perspective yet, and probably nothing from marketing perspective.
Awesome. And that ties with a very polemic video. I think it was a couple of dubs ago that there was an opening video or something when they showed developers well into the night fixing bugs, and there were the the messages in Twitter saying, "Hey, this is not healthy. We shouldn't be glorifying this lifestyle, right?" And I think when you are so passionate about what you're doing, it's hard, right? It's hard to stop, and it's hard to leave that back for the next day when you are almost there, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely. I think I'm not sure about how it is, but in India, we at least developers or engineers or any job, right? We actually tire ourselves a lot. We don't have the concept of burnout over here. Indians can't get burned out in India, at least. I'm not sure. So there is no such thing called as mental health and all of those things. Um, but definitely, so I've been working a lot. There were days I just slept 2 to 3 hours and I was still refreshed the next day. But it's a habit that I've probably got because, we have to work really hard because our population is so large and the competition is fierce. So always at any point of time, we just felt like we have to do much better and everything. But I've realized now that, these things are not as important, and there's something definitely being burnt out, and mental health are certainly valid issues.
Okay, thank you. do you have any more questions, or otherwise I think we can stop the recording and maybe hang out a little bit more just to chit chat if you want. So if you have more questions, this is the time. All right, so I'm gonna stop the recording now, but we can continue still for a little chit chat.